also be allowing Startup Youth Champions Award, a collaborative project between the UN's Living Indus Initiative and NICL. Right off the bat, I want to thank Ms. Laurence, Country Representative FAO, who is joining us online alongside colleagues from UNICEF and FAO. I also want to thank Dr. Tariq Mahmood Jadoon, Provost at LUMS, for taking the time out today, alongside Professor Numan Zafar, Director at NICL, and Sama Mustafa Rana, Head of Operations at NICL. Our event today will run for an hour and a half with a networking tea at the end. Please, for respect for our panelists, keep your phones switched off or on silent. We're going to do a short Q&A towards the end if you have any questions. Before we kick off, I want to introduce our panel that represents most experience and expertise in Pakistan's climate challenges and, more importantly, solutions to these challenges. Dr. Mohammad Abu Bakr is a LUMS faculty member. He's Associate Professor and Chair of the Electrical Engineering Department. He's also the founding director of the Center for Water Informatics and Technology. He has conducted extensive applied research in robotics, automation, and AI with applications to water, agriculture, and environmental issues. Thank you very much for being here today. Dr. Fazilda Nabil is currently the Provincial Coordinator for the Living Indus Initiative and comes with a strong research and background in water. She has been particularly of immense support throughout the development of this grant, and to a great extent, this is her brainchild that we're all going to see today. Marek is an environmental strategist, agility consultant, and entrepreneur, CEO and Director of Water and Sustainability at Umbrella Consulting. Sharmeen is also with the Alliance for Water Stewardship. Mr. Muhammad Bukhari is co-founder and CEO of Farmtar, a deep tech startup focused on agility and sustainability. He has corporate experience in various strategy, commercial, and finance roles, including McKinsey & Co. and at British Telecom. Finally, Ms. Zide Mariam is the founder and managing director, ISP Environmental Solutions Private Limited. She has over a decade of exposure in the field of environment, waste management, and industrial waste handling. In 2019, she was invited as representative women entrepreneur in the United Nations General Assembly. That concludes our very amazing panel. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Sabah Shahid.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Sabah Shahid. I represent the partnerships and projects team here at NICL. And I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's here in person and whoever is joining us online. And before I begin talking about the panel discussion, I do want to acknowledge and thank the NICL team who've been really integral to the entire project that we've been collaborating on with Fazilda, specifically, of course, Quran, Minahil, UB, Samin, Usman. Everyone has really, put in all efforts to make this a success. So today's panel discussion is very important. As Quran said, it's social entrepreneurship for a climate resilient Indus. And this emanates from the Living Indus Green Startup Youth Champions Award, which we have launched in collaboration with the United Nations, more specifically the UNRC office's Living Indus Initiative, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and UNICEF. Fazilda will, of course, talk in deeper detail about the Living Indus Initiative. But for us, this panel discussion is very timely, given Pakistan's climate vulnerability. But more than that, it's crucial to our understanding of the solutions to climate change. We all know about the urgency of the situation. We're ranked number 8 when it comes to climate vulnerability. And not even a year ago, we witnessed the immense devastation that flash floods and torrential rains, caused. We lost over 1,700 Pakistanis. Millions were displaced. The economic losses associated crossed over $15 billion, with spillover effects to several industries, which not only incurred financial setbacks, but had struggled with supply chain management. There was immense impact on the country's employment. So we're aware of the scale of the problem. But today we really want to focus on the solution, particularly with respect to the role young people play. And given Pakistan is the fifth largest country in the world, we have around 63% of the population between 15 to 33 years. So we're a very young country. So from advocacy and awareness raising to research and development, delivering climate resilient products, young people in Pakistan really are at the forefront of our climate action efforts. And here it's worth mentioning that the National Incubation Center at Lahore is committed to creating young Pakistani startups. And we're really a unique player in the entrepreneurial ecosystem because we're at the intersection of academia, entrepreneurs, public sector stakeholders, and we play a pivotal role in enabling and providing an enabling environment for all our stakeholders. So in addition to providing training, skills upgradation, and networking opportunities, we also aim to develop strategic partnerships that can lead to greater channels of learning and collaboration, not only for our startups, but for the community in general. And our mandate also includes supporting projects that are of public interest and that promote innovation that also contributes to securing the livelihood of future generations. And I would like to share here that around 20% of the startups incubated at NICL have a very strong social impact factor associated in their business models. One of our panelists is a NICL alumni, another is an NIC Karachi alumni. So we're very proud that we're able to provide that platform. And as we grow as a center, we really do want to deliver more opportunities for startups to engage in social entrepreneurship and perhaps understand how principles of sustainable development can be integrated into their business models. So some of these startups range from financial inclusion and improved digital literacy to better access to water resources and agri-tech models. So there is a deep understanding for this intention to really contribute towards the country's development. The Living Indus Green Startup Award also emanates from that intention. And the UN, of course, has been part of those efforts to put together this very relevant panel discussion. So before we really deep dive into the panel discussion and talk about how entrepreneurship and climate resilience can come together, I'm going to hand over the floor to Dr. Fazila Nabil to sort of give us a brief overview of the Living Indus initiative, and then we can invite the panelists on.
Thank you, Sabah. Thank you so much. So I'd like to give more time to the panel discussion, but before the panel discussion, it's important to understand, the thinking behind the Living Indus Green Startup Youth Champions Award, and the parent initiative from which this particular award emanates from. So for that, I'll just very quickly go over the Living Indus initiative. I want to start off with the significance of the Indus and what the Indus means for us, for you, for me, for Pakistan. The Indus is, and what the Indus means particularly beyond, the waters that permeate the land that we call Pakistan. So the Indus has about 90% of Pakistan's population residing in the basin, 3/4 of the economy. 9 out of the 10 largest cities are within 50 kilometers of the basin, with the only exception being Quetta. More than 80% of Pakistan's arable land is within the Indus. And not just that, so of course our economy, our ecology depends on the Indus, but in terms of our biodiversity, about 668 bird species are, the Indus Basin is home to them. About 150 fish species, of which 22 are not found anywhere else in the world. and which of course includes the blind Indus dolphin, are residing in the Indus basin. So the Indus is very, very integral to the economy, the ecology, the civilization of Pakistan. Mohenjo-daro and a lot of our heritage sites are testament to the richness of the Indus civilization. We know that the Indus civilization has been documented to be around for more than 5,000 years, and some sources say 7,000 years. And the Indus has really been the backbone of Pakistan's economy, ecology, demography, and civilization. But today, if I were to ask this question as to whether the Indus, which has been there for so long, would be able to support life in this part of the world for another century, I'm not sure if the answer would be in the affirmative. So the Indus is definitely at peril. One of the reasons, of course, is mean average rising temperatures, climate warming. We know that average temperatures have risen by more than 1 degree Celsius in the last century. This and other forces in the form of the triple planetary crisis, climate change, climate change, pollution, as well as biodiversity loss, have resulted in climate crises such as and events such as flooding becoming more frequent. As you can see, the difference between the 2010 floods versus the 2022 floods and the area that it impacted. So multiple sort of stresses on the Indus basin that have been posed by the triple planetary crisis, which have put the Indus and its ecosystems, various ecosystems, the terrestrial ecosystems, the coastal ecosystems, the freshwater ecosystems into peril. Of course, this has an implication on the various sectors of our economy that depend on the Indus for their survival. Agriculture is about 20% of Pakistan's GDP, and more than 60% of Pakistan's exports is, and it is estimated. So we saw a lot of devastation in the previous floods, in the recent floods, but it's also estimated that it's going to further lead to about 10% reduction in agricultural productivity over the coming decade. Livestock, again, half of agricultural output, affects climate warming, affects water production. It enhances disease vectors that affect livestock. Hydroelectricity, 1/3 of Pakistan's energy mix, of course, directly impacted by the impact of climate warming on the agriculture, on the energy sector. Forests, fisheries, and human health. And this sort of brings us to the imperative for the Living Indus initiative and the vision for a shared Indus basin that can sustain a thriving civilization from its source to right to its delta. A healthy Indus whose natural resources and ecosystems have been repaired and restored and become resilient in the face of climate change. The Living Indus is an umbrella initiative. It consists of about 25 sub-interventions, and I'll go over the list of interventions in just a bit, that have been developed keeping in mind the aim of restoring the ecological health of the Indus. This was developed as a living list where extensive consultations were conducted at the provincial level, at the federal level, across all 4 provinces and Azad Jammu and Kashmir. We had a series of consultations with the private sector, with experts, with civil society here at LUMS, in Islamabad, in Karachi, and representing all sectors of stakeholders. And based on the targets that the consultations generated, the Living Indus initiative has aimed to raise between $11 billion to $17 billion between the next 5 to 15 years for the ecological restoration of the Indus. I'll very quickly go over some of the interventions, not going into in details, but just to give you a sense of the kind of novel thinking that has gone behind this initiative that has now been passed by the federal cabinet. Is the official plan for the government of Pakistan, has been taken to the COP27, and is currently being implemented, or at least from going from pre-feasibility to feasibility stage. So interventions like 100,000 community ponds, so communities making ponds for artificial recharge of groundwater, scattered across Pakistan. Interventions such as the Indus cleanup. We know that only 1% of the wastewater in Pakistan is treated. Out of 388 cities in the country, only 8 have wastewater treatment plants. We know that interventions like climate smart agriculture, interventions such as a crowdsourcing program, a crowdsourcing platform. A platform where knowledge about the health of the Indus and about its ecology will be crowdsourced through citizen science. So, for instance, distributing water quality strips to young people, and where they could test for the water quality and upload the results, which is not only a very accurate way of a cheap and accurate way of getting results, but also is going to generate the kind of action and the call for action from young people and from citizens that you need. So interventions, I'll come to this, the social entrepreneurship for a climate resilient Indus in a bit. And this is essentially where this particular initiative that we're talking about today emanates from. The prevention where it emanates from. But let me talk about a few others before I move on. So zero plastic waste cities along the Indus. Making 10 of your largest cities zero plastic waste cities. And this has been done, through public-private partnerships between UNDP and on a very small scale in Rahim Yar Khan. It is being currently implemented with a target of 2025. Urban forests along the Indus, Mewaki forests, urban forests that improve the resilience of cities to withstand urban flooding and also make cities more livable. The Indus Protection Act, which aims to give rights to legal personhood to the Indus River and its ecosystems. Then community-based ecotourism that aims to involve communities in the north and in major touristy hubs of Pakistan to be involved in ecotourism. And of course, interventions in the story, making young initiative, because as I mentioned earlier, this is really a call for action. This is a call for action to engage young people like yourself, to engage to really ecological sustainability and take this in our hands so that we are able to restore, work towards restoration of the health of the Indus. The interventions are spread in terms of their focus area. They're really spread, over governance, pollution control, a lot of green infrastructural solutions in urban areas, climate smart agriculture, forestry, biodiversity, groundwater recharge, and again, communication and awareness. In terms of, so let me talk more about the social entrepreneurship for climate resilient Indus. Sabah has discussed how social entrepreneurs are integral, for the health basin. Pakistan has already seen, some activity within the area. We know that there are startups that are manufacturing eco bricks using plastic waste. There are startups that have been featured globally that are manufacturing nozzles that save water. There are startups in the sustainable housing domain. There are startups that have come up with solar powered street vendors for as sustainable solutions. There's a lot that is going on in this space. And the Living Indus Youth Champions Award is one pilot initiative under the Living Indus initiative, under the parent initiative, that has aimed to engage young people to put their minds towards sustainable solutions for the environment, sustainable solutions that address the triple planetary crisis. And that's really what I want to say. I leave you with a video, just summarizing and sort of. This video was actually made by. It captures some of the images from the Indus expedition, which was a rafting expedition done by a few colleagues, supported by the Living Indus.
I'd like to invite the panelists up, please, so we can begin our discussion. Isn't that? Have a seat. Am I in the frame? Am I not in the frame? So while we wait, I don't want to wait for the chair. We'll begin while I'm standing. So given we're in a university setting, the first question I'm going to ask is to the professor on the panel. We've been presented with the gravity of the situation. Fazilda has spoken about, how important research and reliance on data is for the Living Indus initiative. But what we want to understand is whether there's a disconnect between higher education institutes with respect to their research and the end consumer of that research, which is industry. So do you believe there is an appetite for the kind of research, for instance, you're doing with respect to water informatics? And if there is a disconnect, what are some better ways of engaging with industry and the private sector?
I think since you have asked a very generic question about the state of affairs with the general academia and industry, I think it will be difficult to give these very kind of generalized statements. So let me just stick to what I do.
Of course, with respect to the kind of research you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So especially at LUMS and at the center lead, and I'm also affiliated with the electrical engineering department and of course School of Science and Engineering where we are sitting. There has been a very conscious effort since the very inception of this school and since when we set up the center here, that the very idea that you just mentioned, the disconnect between what is really needed on the ground and what our research is. To make a concrete point, maybe I can relate my own story. So I was trained as a roboticist and applied mathematician actually. Most of my life did very esoteric, abstract things before coming to LUMS. And there was a very conscious decision, at least on my part, to just forget what I had learned so far and really look at what was needed on the ground. And this is a journey that has taken and almost every second year we encounter something new and we try to learn it. So Shameen was just asking me about those schools that we used to organize at one time. And literally we started like that we are set up a water center. And Zilda, of course, you were there at the very beginning of this journey as well. We just literally started to educate ourselves what is really needed. So me being an electrical engineer in my team, there were mechatronics engineers, there were computer scientists. We didn't know that there is going to be a need for these new technologies, these ICT technologies, AI, robotics, IoTs, models, and so on and so forth. I don't know all of that stuff. So we really started by educating ourselves towards learning what those things were. But at the same time, we were also wanted to learn about the issues. And most of the issues we have learned are not via textbooks, but really experientially by going to the sites, by talking to people, from learning from farmers, from environmental professionals, and distilling all that information and converting those into science questions. You may look at, for example, some of the PhD theses that we have produced in the last few years. They are very much targeted towards questions that are related to, for example, the Indus Basin. So Zilda just showed us the 25 interventions or a computational model in which we can plug in these interventions and find investment options, numbers. These are going to be the savings in energy, in water, in emissions. If such a model does not exist, let's go ahead and create one. So this was one PhD that we did. In another, we are I'm just close to finishing supervising. We have been looking at smart irrigation solutions. The implications of having information and what does that mean for the farmers and for irrigation managers. So these are just a couple of examples of where we have really taken the questions that have been posed to us by government agencies, by people on the ground who are really into the thick and thin of all of these issues. And then we sort of converted them into academic questions. Second thing that I would just very quickly say before I give a chance for others to contribute to that is that from tackling difficult questions. So even on the academic side of things, whenever we have tried to direct our research, someone that if there is a low-hanging fruit, if everybody is doing it, I run away from it. It is really what is needed 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into the future, and we start preparing it for it now. To give you another concrete example, we have recently been in an ADB funded project with the Punjab Irrigation Department, where we are looking at the rescheduling of canal flow releases. This was something that I saw coming at least a decade back, when we started to. And you must have heard this story. I mean, this was just a crazy idea. We went to the irrigation people, to others that, well, I can build you these little sensors that can measure telemetry, real-time flows, and we can also measure demand using satellite technologies. But I can also build you these gates who can go up and down and do the canal releases. Believe it or not, after 10 or 12 years of thinking about this, many theses, many it now. And this is already in the field. We are doing a pilot testing just this year. And I mean, this is a very good example of where this kind of academic preparation that takes years and years to see in the future and prepare the workforce for it, science, and then release it when the time is.
In essence, I feel like a researcher's mind is very similar to an entrepreneur's happening. You have to really look long term and predict, okay, this is the problems will look like 10 years, 15 years down the road, and what is it that I can do to contribute to that problem. So, and I feel, Sharmeen, it's similar because you're a consultant who's engaged with the private sector, right? And you worked with industries from textile to food and beverages. So how do you, it's a similar question to you, but with respect to the private sector. Is there an appetite for the kind of technical work you're doing and integrating those findings into, let's say, business models of larger corporations? Like
Definitely.
I know you worked with Nestle, let's say, or Generation with their textile work. So do you see that understanding or that initiative coming from the private sector? Or as a technical consultant, are you going, hello, listen, this is, red flags, this is a problem, it's time you pay
No,
attention?
definitely, in the private sector, they do look for candidates that have a um, larger understanding base of what's going on. It's just not directed towards the industry that they're working in. Because now the private sector is also moving towards creating shared value and CSR programs that they're taking seriously. It's just not greenwashing anymore.
Right.
And they do need a lot of contribution in terms of understanding from people who work there about these ideas. I've also been teaching at the A level for many years because I find that level to be the most malleable and interesting. And the connection that you were talking about initially, TK from universities such as LUMS and FCC and Government College, where you are churning out technically sound students and research, uske ilawa bhi you need to really take it down to the grassroots level. Very basic. You need to instill a core understanding of what's happening around us. Automatically, the choices we are going to make as individuals is going to be about our survival, and we do recognize that the survival of the environment is our survival. But we never get to make that choice because we are never exposed to that kind of information. I personally feel environmental sciences and climate change and environmental management are subjects that should be compulsory in schools, at the A levels, at college level, at baccalaureate level, at your master's, at your PhD. It should be something that should be incorporated in everything because because climate change is now not an environmental crisis anymore. It's a social crisis, and we're all affected by it, including industry and business models. And believe me, you can't save the environment on an empty tummy. You just can't. You have to face that hard truth, and you have to take your business along, and you have to be able to do something about it. But that awareness is seriously that connection between agencies that have that research and data, um, social enterprises, you have the industry itself. That connection is missing. It's just not there unless you take it upon yourself to connect, but there are no platforms. I mean, that's how I was introduced to Dr. Sabher. I attended one of the many, not many, just 4 summer schools that he had conducted, and we learned a lot. It was a matter of not business networking. We actually sat together in a room, different people's different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, and we learned from each other. And we were inspired to go out and share wherever we were, with our students, with our colleagues in the industry. And we need more platforms like those. I mean, I know if something is happening at LUMS, you will look at a certain type of stakeholders where you will invite them, different university and stuff. But perhaps maybe you need to look a little lower to students who might be coming to LUMS or might choose LUMS or FCC. They need to be inspired to do this, and survival is the biggest inspiration these days. So there is a disconnect. Yes, answering your question, there is a huge disconnect. I help hire a lot of industry for the new sustainability departments and stuff. And I just find somebody who's done a course in ISO 14001 and they think it's good enough for them to be able to come and join a sustainability department. They have no motivation or idea of why it's important to conserve water. They're looking at the business case. They're not looking at recharge or ecological restoration. And that needs to be more important now. पहले हम कहते थे business case is like what, 70%, environment gets saved 30%. We do not save the environment and we don't work at it around like a 70% focus. Our businesses are going to collapse.
You touched upon something very important, which was the grassroots reality. I'm going to switch gears and maybe have a startup come in and talk about their experience. Perhaps, Mohammed, you can touch upon this, because you're working in the agriculture sector, which is the most perhaps impacted with respect to climate change. बारिशें होती हैं तो सबसे पहले crops ही impact होते हैं. And Sharmeen very rightly pointed out that we're sitting, perhaps even this panel discussion, it's to an extent the impact may be superficial, but what are the ground realities? And given that our audience are potential entrepreneurs, if you can talk about how you came up with the idea, you saw an issue, you saw an environmental problem, how you were able to align your business principles perhaps with those sustainability principles.
Sure. I think just taking from both Dr. Abu Bakar's and Sharmeen's discussion just now, number one, I think what's amazing about academia and why it's super important and bridges the gap between what needs to be done and what actually happens is that actually the time horizons are quite long. So as a startup, I don't have the luxury of 10 years, right? 10 months is considered a really, really long time. But what I can do is take all the good work that Dr. Abu Bakar has done, try to kind of repackage it, mold it, and try and apply it commercially into industry. And we certainly do that. And in this particular instance, we indeed have. And then based on what Sharmeen was saying, actually, historically, it's been very difficult to prove a business case of any kind when it comes to sustainability. But I think as climate change has become more and more important, that business case is much more obvious now, right? And case in point, you could argue that one of the reasons I got involved in Fandar was because of the business case. So our first products were actually created for our own farms. And the reason for that was actually we wanted to save money, right? We wanted to cut the amount of money we were spending on irrigation. We wanted to cut the amount of money we were spending on chemicals. We wanted to improve the quality of our products, mangoes and chilies in this particular instance. And precision agriculture was a silver bullet-ish way of doing it, right? And so the products we initially created for our farm, after about testing and refining those products for about 18 months, we actually achieved those things, right? Our water consumption reduced dramatically. We were much less reliant on chemicals, and our yields were actually going up at the same time. So that's really when we realized actually this, if applied in a much larger context, could achieve some really great things, right? And thankfully, we were able to actually translate that vision and convince investors to come on board so that we could actually really build products out and take them to market. I think there are significant sort of behavioral and adoption related challenges in Pakistan. Sustainability, I think, becomes a lot more challenging when the audience you're trying to address is very fragmented and large, as is the case for at least agriculture in Pakistan. The solutions Dr. Saab is talking about, they're no-brainer solutions, right? For a country which is massively reliant on, in fact, canal irrigation, right? Like something like that, obviously, like it's a bit of a no-brainer, but the challenge becomes that canal irrigation kind of network is really connecting tens of millions of people who are farmers, and a lot of them are very small holder farmers. there's not really that much aggregation. So anything in the agriculture space, really, I think there's a business case for it. There's amazing research and a platform in terms of work for it. But the challenging bits are actually more socioeconomic. They're trying to understand actually what do we do to restructure perhaps the way that the industry is set up. Can we aggregate farmers in a way where all these sort of amazing technologies that already exist can be disseminated to them? Perhaps, and perhaps if we were in a different part of the world, the policy framework is such that it actually enables all of that. But unfortunately, that is not a strength of ours, especially currently. So I think ground reality-wise, really, there's other challenges. More, I would say, socioeconomic and more commercial challenges about trying to acquire customers and trying to actually sell technology to customers.
I do have a follow-up question because I think you identified a very important aspect, which is the behavioral change of it, right? So when you started your startup and FarmDar, do you witness, for instance, resistance from maybe perhaps even the farmers working on your lands? And then the second question to that is, do you see maybe an imitation of your practices? Do you have, for instance, neighboring farm owners coming up to you and saying, it's very interesting what you're doing, can we talk about this technology? So from the perspective of, let's say, an entrepreneur, is there this interest in maybe understanding these new technologies, or are people more, prone to go towards the traditional route, given our economy, our political situation doesn't allow that much risk taking?
Gee, I think farmers in Pakistan are a very large demographic, first of all. So what we try to do is segment it. You have your corporate farmers, or you could say, aggregated corporations that are getting into farmers, vertically integrated corporations that are getting into farmers. Obviously, it's very easy to sell them technology, right? If you're a Nestle and your global kind of initiatives include net zero or saving water, they will listen to you, right? You then have, I would say, your large absentee agricultural landholders who are mostly politicians and things like that. And that's really where a really weird space where, it's the management that's involved, and it's very difficult to sell them technology and kind of precision agriculture. Then I think there are your farmers who really farm because that's their livelihood. And I think they're willing to listen always, right? Because if you're trying to sell them technology, they will probably not understand it. But if you're giving them a problem that actually, or a solution that actually, solves a problem in their lives, they will listen to you. So when we go to farmers like that, we don't talk about, an application or digital agriculture or anything like that. We talk about saving boris of urea, right? How many boris of urea are you using? I think I can save you 1 out of those 5. And all of a sudden that's 15,000 rupees to that guy, right? So he will actually listen to you. He will test you out. And I think I found that farmers are actually quite notorious in terms of if you lose their trust, they will never come back, right? So people are actually willing to give you a shot, but then you've got to have the confidence and the product and the technology to be able to then keep their trust. And I think therein lies the answer. If you're able to give them a real solution that is based on kind of research and development, that is based on solving an actual real world problem for them, and it does, then it's magic.
May I jump in?
Sure.
A question just popped up. So, challenged communities were more receptive to what you were trying to do than somebody who could actually afford to do it, like
Correct.
big farm holdings and.
Gee, it's purely because I wouldn't quite go as far as to say challenge communities, but I would say people who rely day to day on farming as a source of income, let's say. Now, you could either say that somebody's quite well off, but is a farmer day to day and is involved in it, or you could say that they're doing farming for subsistence reasons, right? So I think it's a fairly.
I came up with the thing of challenged communities because of the flooding. I feel that smaller holdings and smaller villages and cities all along the Indus are now challenged communities. We should be thinking of
Yes, I agree with that.
them as such if we want to even adapt and mitigate and have some sort of programs, because going forward we have to look at it as it being that bad, to be able to have some, semblance of sanity in what we do. That's why I said not actually, I can understand, but I feel that anything lying right next to a riverbank is now challenged.
I totally agree with you.
Whether they're doing well or whether it's subsistence farming.
I mean, we don't have to look too far back in history
Yeah.
for that to be proven,
Yes.
right? So yeah, I mean, we did find that challenged communities, or particularly those who rely on agriculture as a source of income, where they have to balance the books using agriculture, well, then they'll listen to you if you can give them a better formula to balance the books, essentially, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just taking that point about, balancing the books, I do want to go back to the initial question I had, and I'm going to bring Zile in here. When you're setting up a social enterprise, you have to balance your business model to your social objectives, right? So how do you, when you were coming up with ISP environmental solutions, if you could, number one, share what your startup is about, and also, so how do you balance that? And is it really a challenge? So on the one hand, you're thinking, okay, I'm starting a business. Why should I not just focus on profit? I think Sharmeen and I were having this discussion yesterday. Why should we not just focus on profit? Because it is a trade-off, right? Aapko at some point sochna that this is where I maybe bring in my urge to make money, and this is where, no, I need to focus on my social responsibilities.
So this is so true. पहले तो ये है कि बिजनेस को स्टैब्लिश करने के लिए जो आइडिया है उसका स्केल अप क्या हो सकता है. सो मेरा पहला स्टार्टअप जो था दैट वाज ऑन वेस्ट टू एनर्जी, और बैक इन 2015 सिलिकॉन वैली में उस पर फंडिंग मिली. वापस पाकिस्तान आया, पता चला कि कोल की प्राइसेस एकदम से नीचे चली गई हैं और वो वाला जो स्टार्टअप है वो इतना अच्छा टेक ऑफ नहीं ले सकता. कुछ हद तक वो गिरता पड़ता रहा, लेकिन देन इट जस्ट फिल्ड अप. फिर उसके बाद एक और स्टार्टअप था दैट वाज ट्रैश मस्ती. उसमें दैट वाज अ सोशल एंटरप्राइज. उसमें घरों से कचरा इकट्ठा करना था और ऑनलाइन एप्लीकेशन थी. हमें उस वक्त एप्लीकेशन के ऊपर बहुत गरूर था कि हम जहाँ जाते हैं हमें लोग पूछते हैं ट्रैश मस्ती बड़ा फैसिनेटिंग नाम है, जल्दी जल्दी लोग उस पर आना शुरू हो गए. पीपल स्टार्ट कि ये क्या है. जहाँ जाते थे वो लोग 5 मिनट के लिए उसको डाउनलोड करके और फिर ख़त्म कर देते थे. सो और जो मेरा सारा बैकग्राउंड वो प्योर साइंस बैकग्राउंड था. सो आई वॉज इनटू इट के इंडस्ट्री को सोल्यूशंस देने चाहिए रादर देन मैं पिछले 10-15 साल से यही काम कर रही हूँ. जिस वक्त ट्रैश मस्ती को मैंने देखा कि वो हम वी आर पिवटिंग द मॉडल, लेकिन वी आर फेल्ड टू बिल्ड द टीम. सो इफ यू डोंट हैव अ प्रॉपर टीम, यू डोंट हैव पीपल टू इम्प्लीमेंट, और फिर एक ऐसा ऊपर लीडरशिप जो कि उन सब चीज़ों को जोड़ के रखे, तो फिर आपके बिजनेसेस, आपके स्टार्टअप्स फेल होते हैं. और इसमें कोई इतनी बुरी बात नहीं है, जो कि मुझे 1 साल लगा इस बात को गैदर करने में कि अगर आपका फेलियर होता है देन व्हाट. सो फिर आपने कैसे, हाउ यू हैव टू गैदर अप योर एनर्जी, फिर अगला स्टेप कैसे लेना है, क्योंकि प्योर वेस्ट से बैकग्राउंड था, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन थी, प्रैक्टिकल साइड थी और बिल्कुल अनकॉमन साइड थी. सो वेस्ट के बिजनेस में फीमेल्स नहीं थी और अभी भी बहुत कम है. एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट बहुत सारे आना शुरू हो गए, जो खवातीन आ रही थी, लेकिन वो IEEs और EIS पे और बाकी चीज़ों पे काम कर रहे थे या रिसर्च में थे, एकेडेमिया की तरफ थी. सो जो सबसे मेजर चैलेंज था वो ये था कि वो कॉमन प्रॉब्लम्स जो सोशल प्रॉब्लम्स हैं उनको कैसे इंटीग्रेट करना है, उनको कैसे कन्वर्ट करना है बिजनेस में, और फिर बिजनेस की टीम को कैसे करना है, और फिर वो कैसे डिफाइन करना है कि दिस इज द लिमिट, इस लिमिट को जो क्रॉस करेगा सो आई एम रेडी टू फाइट. सो जब वो लाइन सारी डिफाइन हो गई तो फिर उसके बाद मनी मेकिंग स्टार्ट होती है. बिजनेस मॉडल जो पहले था वो था सिर्फ घरों से कचरा इकट्ठा करना, सिर्फ रिसाइक्लेबल्स. लेकिन जो ISP जहाँ से फॉर्मुलेट हुई वो AOP थी, जो कि 2 लोग चलाने की कोशिश कर रहे थे. उन्होंने अपना पैसा डुबोया और फिर आई वाज द थर्ड पैसा कमाना है हमने उसमें डाल देना है. So it was perfectly fine क्योंकि वो मेरा अपना डिसीजन था. लेकिन जो सबसे बेहतरीन चीज हुई वो थी टीम बिल्डिंग. सो टीम की जो स्ट्रक्चर हुआ, एक फाइनेंशियल साइड को देख रहा, एक टेक्निकल साइड को और एक ऑपरेशंस को. तीनों लोग फर्क काम करते हैं, एक दूसरे में इंटरफेयर नहीं करते. एंड दिस इज हाउ द बिजनेसेस वर्क, स्टार्टअप्स के लिए खास तौर पे. शुरू में जो पहले 3,000 आए वो बड़ी खुशी थी, 1,000 बांट लिया और हमें पता चला हमने कमा लिया. फिर पता चला कि 6 लाख का बिजनेस है और फटाफट जो फ्रेंड्स एंड फैमिली से पैसे इकट्ठे किए, एक हाउसिंग सोसाइटी में कचरे का काम मिल गया और हमें ऐसे लगे जैसे हमने दुनिया फतह की है. द मोमेंट वी एंटर्ड पता चला दूसरे महीने वो हमारे से 6.5 लाख वो भी खा गए और हमें भी साथ ही डुबो गए और 12.5 लाख का नुकसान कर गए. और एंड दैट्स इट. सो वहां से समझ आई कि अपनी साइट बिल्टअप होनी चाहिए जहां से कचरा उठाओ और लेके जाओ और सॉर्टिंग करो. और क्योंकि हम इंडस्ट्री को सॉल्यूशंस देते थे, सो द मोमेंट हमें ये पता चला कि वी नीड मोर पीपल जिनके साथ हम मिलके काम कर सकें, तो हमने लोगों को अपने साथ मिलाना शुरू कर दिया. हमने रेंटल पे एक जगह ली, वहाँ शेखुपुरा में 8 acres ऑफ लैंड, वहाँ पे इंटीग्रेटेड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट फैसिलिटी बना दी. बिल्कुल अबंडन एरिया था, पिछले 10-12 साल से खत्म हुई हुई जमीन पड़ी हुई थी. किसी जमाने में वहाँ पे कोई 400 लोग काम करते थे. सो समझ ये आई कि एक्चुअली में पैसे से ज्यादा आपको लोगों की जरूरत है जो आपको एक एनर्जी और पावर दे सके अपने आइडियाज को इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए. लेकिन वो लोग जिनका एक्चुअली में आपको पता हो कि इनका माइंडसेट हमसे मिलता है. वो पागल खाना जरूरी नहीं होता कि पैकेट साथ कर लो जिसने आपको परेशान ही करते रहना है कि भाई मेरे 10 रुपए और मेरे 5 रुपए और सो वहां से पहला क्लाइंट नेशनल फूड्स मिला. हमने फिर पैसे इकट्ठे किए, फिर घर वालों से झिड़कियां खाई और फिर उस जगह को बनाया. बिल्कुल बुरे हाल थे, पेंट शेंट कराया और जैसे भी उसको इकट्ठा करके इंटीग्रेटेड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट फैसिलिटी के लिए हमने एनवायरनमेंट डिपार्टमेंट में अप्लाई कर दिया. सो जब हमारी जैसे ही हमें काम मिला, तो जिस दिन हमारा एनओसी मिला हमें कंस्ट्रक्शन फेज का, उसी दिन पेप्सी कोला ने हमें विजिट करना था और हमारे पास सिर्फ लैंड थी दिखाने के लिए और हम सिर्फ 2 लोग थे उनको एंटरटेन करने के लिए. सो पेप्सी से टीम आई, उन्होंने देखा, उन्होंने कहा नहीं चले अभी तो आप लोग तैयार नहीं है. सो अब हमें ये था कि हम इतने पैसे लगा चुके हैं और फिर हम वहीं खड़े हैं. सो 1 महीने के बाद अगला क्लाइंट आया, उससे अगले महीने उससे अगला क्लाइंट आया. And then there's a start of a series. So there was no looking back. पहले रेंटल थी, अब हमारे पास अपने पार्टनर्स हैं, हमने शेयर्स अपने बेचे, पार्टनर्स को एंटर किया और जमीन भी साथ में उनके एंटर कर दी. सो वो एक ऐसी बैरन लैंड जिसका कुछ नहीं हो सकता था, वो अब ISP ओन्ड लैंड है. सो कहने का मकसद ये है कि अगर आपके पास बेहतर आइडियाज हैं और एंटरप्राइजेस के, सोशल एंटरप्राइजेस के, ये सब आप सोशल वर्क, हम कुछ फ्री काम भी इसमें कर रहे होते हैं, हॉस्पिटल्स के साथ हम फ्री करते हैं, लेकिन हम इंडस्ट्री को चार्ज करते हैं. सो हम कहीं ना कहीं से बैलेंस कर लेते हैं. सो उस 0 से 45 क्लाइंट्स तक का जो अभी ये 3 सालों में जो हमारी जर्नी थी, उसने हमें बताया कि सिर्फ एक आइडिया नहीं होना चाहिए, उस आइडिया के साथ हुकअप और चीजें भी होनी चाहिए ताकि आप चलते रहे. अभी जैसे इंडस, लिविंग इंडस की बात है, लिविंग इंडस जो इंडस रिवर है, इट्स सेकंड लार्जेस्ट जो कि प्लास्टिक को कैरी करता है और अपनी सोर्स से लेके और अपने डेल्टा तक वो घसीटता वही लाता है. सो प्लास्टिक आपके पास एक इतना अच्छा रेवेन्यू जनरेट करने की स्ट्रीम है. अगर आपको ये समझ आ जाए कि हमने उसकी कलेक्शन कैसे करनी है और छोटे छोटे मशरूम एरियाज आप बनाना शुरू कर दें, एम्पावर करना शुरू कर दें उन्हीं लोगों को और उनके साथ अपने नेटवर्क बना लें, तो यू कैन मेक अ गुड बिजनेस उसके लिए, पूरे उस एरिया के लिए. फिर हमारे पास इंटीग्रेटेड फैसिलिटीज नहीं है वेस्ट के लिए. मैं वेस्ट को इसलिए बार बार कह रही हूँ क्योंकि मेरा काम कचरे से सारा शुरू होता है, कचरे में ही खत्म होता है. सो इसलिए मैं बार बार कहती हूँ कि आप वहां से बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं. बैग्स बन रहे हैं आजकल, इंडिया में बहुत काम हो रहा है इसके ऊपर. फिर नेचर आपको सॉल्यूशंस प्रोवाइड करती है. वाटर हाइसिंथ, आई एम श्योर डॉक्टर साहब, वाटर हाइसिंथ और डकवीड्स वगैरह ये बड़े अच्छे नेचुरल प्लांट्स हैं जो कि आपके क्लींजिंग के काम आते हैं. और टाटा इंडस्ट्रीज का बड़ा मशहूर मेरे हमें केस है जिसमें इन्होंने ह्यूज एरिया में वाटर क्लीन करने के लिए इन्होंने लगाया हुआ है वो। सो कोशिश ये करें, ये नहीं होता कि आपका कोई बहुत बड़ा आइडिया होगा वो पिच करेंगे और फिर बहुत सारे पैसे मिलेंगे और अमीर हो जाएंगे। छोटा सा आइडिया हो, इम्प्लीमेंटेबल हो, स्केल अप करने वाला हो और दूसरों को हेल्प करने वाला हो, समझ में आ जाए कि इससे हमारी तो जिंदगी संवरेगी, दूसरे की भी संवर जाएगी। सो इट विल वर्क।
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's very inspiring. And before I come to you, Fazil, I want to go back to Dr. Abubakar because Muhammad or Zile ne jo share kiya, it seems more like bottom-up sort of way to find those solutions, nature-based solutions. But I'm wondering whether, for instance, जिस तरह आपका applied research में काम है, have you, for instance, been solicited research through a grant, perhaps, or through industry? And if you could share an example where you've seen where your research has actually helped a business scale up their production, maybe, or maybe with the government you've engaged or you've worked on a specific problem through your research. If you could just share that process with us.
जी बिल्कुल। So industries bhi or government agencies bhi, they come to us all the time. There are certain examples jahan par acha hamara research has been used and it has been scaled up और उसे कुछ impact भी हमें नजर आ रहा है. A lot of things we have tried quite a bit और नहीं भी काम कर सकी. Of course those failures are also there. तो I was just sort of thinking in my mind कि मैं आपको कौन सी example जो है वो बताऊं जो कि ज़्यादा resonate कर सके with the sort of the social entrepreneurs that you have in mind right now. एक मैं जिक्र करना चाहूँगा खास तौर पे शुगर कैन इंडस्ट्री का. तो I can name them as well. So Almoi's Industries जो है वो this is आपको पता है उनकी sugar mills हैं throughout the country. They came to us and then they were interested in water saving technologies because sugarcane, as you know, has a very bad reputation in Pakistan. वो बहुत ज़्यादा cite भी किया जाता है कि along with rice इनका बहुत बड़ा water का footprint है. Also, I think the sugar industry is worried about their own image as well as their own sort of because they have to pass certain international sort of regulations and standards as well to be able to export sugar. So they came to us and then they heard about this water saving technologies we have been working on for quite a number of years. Now I want to cite their example because although हमने उनको को बहुत ज़्यादा अपनी कोई technology बेच नहीं दी or there were not like hundreds of gadgets that we ended up putting in their farms and from that the center was able to generate a lot of money. What I really liked about this particular industry was that they were very, very careful in sort of helping us evaluate the technology, and in doing that, they actually helped us in our research. तो हमें बड़ा वो सेल्फ रिफ्लेक्शन का भी उसके अंदर जो है मौका मिला. तो उन्होंने 2-3 साल तक हमारे वो जो हमने देर was this certain gadget, this soil moisture sensor you put in the ground और वो आपको जो है वो बताता रहता है कि सेविंग कितनी हुई है. And in that one particular experiment जो कि 2-3 साल तक जो है वो चलता रहा, they gave us very good numbers. So we were supposed to be the academic partner who was supposed to generate numbers and all that. लेकिन उनके यहाँ एक पूरी टीम थी, there was an agronomist there, and that actually made me realize कि हम ये bad mouth करते हैं certain industries को. Everybody is trying to do their part. उन्होंने उसको carefully उस product को of course evaluate भी किया, उसके तरीके से बड़े positive results भी हमारे पास लेके आए. We were also engaged in evaluating that particular technology for other application areas as well. Lekin it was really in that one partner very, very careful trial जिसमें हमारे पास कुछ solid numbers आ गए. Once we got those numbers, then with other partners where we were doing this trial at much larger number, उससे हमें एकदम confidence हो गया कि अच्छा इसको अगर हम किसी और जगह पे लेके जाते हैं, now we are a little bit confident कि ये चीज काम जरूर करती है. So the technological aspect of whether the gadget works, उसकी बैटरी काम करती है, उसका रेडियो चलता है, वो तो एक वो अलग चीज थी जिसको we were perfecting on the side. लेकिन this very sort of careful trial by another partner that helped us a lot. अब उसका मैं आपको एक बाय प्रोडक्ट आपको बताता हूँ कि अब now all this we were of of course, working with Nestle, with Almoi's, Pepsi has also done our trials. बहुत सी industries हैं जो कि इस soil moisture gadget को देख रही हैं. In fact, farmdar के साथ भी हम एक collaboration के अंदर हमने देखा कि maybe we can use conjunctively satellite remote sensing technology with those gadgets as well. तो सब कुछ चल रहा था. As a byproduct of all of this industrial engagement, we were able to spread this soil moisture network throughout Punjab, जिसमें हमारे पास hundreds of sites के ऊपर ये gadgets जो हैं वो चल रहे हैं. Time came जब एक certain need आती है कि हमने verification करनी है for a certain technology, जिसमें claim ये किया गया है कि आपने satellite remote sensing के जरिए soil moisture content को आप measure कर सकते हैं या नहीं कर सकते. And all of these installations that we were doing for very different purpose. I mean, we were just engaging with farmers और उनको हम कोई बेचने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं या हम industries को एक किस्म का बेच ही रहे हैं कि भाई यार ये हमारा चीज बड़ी अच्छी है, इसको आप इस्तेमाल करेंगे large numbers में, वो आपका benefit होगा. All of a sudden this now gets converted into a scientific product. क्योंकि वो जो network है, now that can be used as a benchmark, that can be used as a scientific data collection mechanism. और वो उसको बिल्कुल हमने एक और पर्पस के लिए जो इस्तेमाल करना जो है वो शुरू कर दिया. तो दोज आर द काइंड ऑफ यू कैन से वो जो एक सिनर्जी बनती है ना आपको, जैसे आपने अपनी स्टोरी में रिलेट किया, वी स्टार्टेड ऑफ विद दिस थिंकिंग अबाउट दिस गैजेट एज प्योरली एज अ टेक्नोलॉजी प्रोडक्ट, फिर उसको एज अ मींस टू मे बी जनरेट सम रेवेन्यू फॉर द सेंटर के, चाहे वो एकेडमिक रिसर्च वाला काम जो कर रहे हैं हमारे लोग, उनको किसी तरह से पैसे बन जाएं इसके जरिए से, to the point where the product actually, when installed in large number, becomes a scientific product itself, which is generating a large amount of credible and valuable data. तो ये सारी चीजें आपस में इस तरह से जो है वो लिंक हो जाती हैं ultimately.
I'd like Mohammed you to respond to that क्योंकि आपका भी agri-tech business है. Like, do you have a similar experience where you felt कि मेरी एक technology की वजह से there are positive spillovers perhaps that I can use and then scale up?
Gee, sure. Before that, I would just like to kind of follow what Doc Saab was saying. Actually, very early on in our journey, I think एक तो Doc Saab अब direct effects की बात करें, but indirectly there's a lot of benefit as well. Very early on in our journey, Ali Akbar is sat over there. Ali Akbar और Dr. Saab ने actually हमारे साथ जितनी भी collaborations की और जितनी information sharing की, we have 2 or 3 of those moisture sensors as well. It actually helped us a lot. Right? As a startup, an organization like LUMS, if they're actually, providing validation to some of your products, or indeed the opposite, if they're telling you कि हमारी technology हमने इसको test किया, where actually हमारे products उनके साथ नहीं चल रहे, so then we know what to abandon, where to kind of put more attention and things like that. So I think very earlier on in our journey, maybe directly or indirectly, LUMS and Dr. Saab and their work has actually helped us a lot. So एक तो ये चीज़, आप जिस चीज़ की बात कर रहे हैं, actually देखें, our DNA is a little bit different, right? In terms of products and what works, we usually look to a customer. So I would be not far from the truth if I told you कि हमारे जो सबसे ज़्यादा revenue generating products हैं, they were actually not our ideas. They came from problems that were exposed to us by customers, and it was our ability to create solutions that address those problems that actually turn them into good products. अब हमारा एक product है crop scan, जो हम satellite imagery, high resolution satellite imagery use करते हैं. हमारा एक AI model है जो उस imagery को classify कर देता है बहुत accurately down at a few meter level. And that's our hero product at the moment, generates a fair bit of revenue for us. And it wasn't our idea. We got introduced to Gourmet Foods for essentially, kind of precision monitoring type products on their corporate farms. They happened to own a sugar mill. They saw what we could do on their corporate farms. They invited us to do something at the sugar mill, and they said, well, can you find me sugarcane? I'm like, okay, we'll try. And actually, that's where that product developed from. So for us, it's a little bit different how we look at products. Like sometimes we'll leverage research, sometimes we'll do our own research, but quite a lot of the times we will just take a problem and try and reverse engineer a solution for it.
I think there's definitely learning for potential startups in the way you're approaching things, and I'm sure most people who are running businesses think of it that way. It's either you're finding a solution proactively, or the solution is coming to you through your consumer indirectly.
And none of that would be possible if you did not have a very strong stakeholder engagement plan in place as a startup.
Exactly.
You need to be able to sit down with the people themselves
Yes.
on the ground
Yeah.
to be able to see the problems and then create a solution and then, make a profit of it or
Exactly.
not.
I think if there's one piece of advice I could give anyone who's starting out is customer centricity. Is really, really important. Otherwise, you're throwing darts in the dark.
Right.
And you know what? Sometimes even that works. You might hit the bullseye, but actually, if you want a better shot at building a sustainable business, get to know your customers really, really, really well. Get under their skin, get in their brains, whatever analogy you want, right? But that's super important.
Yeah. I want to come to Sharmeen and talk to you about stakeholders. But first, let's bring Fazilda in because she's been sitting very patiently. I want to, Fazilda, Mohammed was talking about, from his experience, the sense we get perhaps is here's someone who's very proactively looking at his business. He's perhaps not a traditional agriculture, agri-tech owner. He's someone who's very proactively looking at his problems and his customers. With respect to something such as the Living Indus initiative, which is a very sort of, in some sense, it's top down. I know there's a bottom up element when you're engaging with stakeholders, but with the Living Indus initiative that's associated with the SDGs. Before that, we had the UN and the Millennium Development Goals. A lot of the criticism that came around these, internationally driven projects is that they're very superficial in nature. They don't engage with the end beneficiary, and there is that disconnect, right? So MDGs की भी एक criticism थी. Pakistan didn't, I think, achieve more than half our indicators. I mean, we've together worked on analyzing those multiple times. और वो criticism थी कि localization efforts ही कोई नहीं है. So do you agree that, that was a problem? And given the experiences we have of our startups here, do you think the MDGs perhaps are looking at it differently? And also, how are international aid agencies who are at the forefront of these kind of findings, how are they evolving when it comes to understanding the local scenario?
So I'll talk about, I think, in order to answer that question, I want to talk about the Living Indus initiative and how it was conceptualized first, and then move on to, how international development organizations like the UN and others are learning from past experience in development programs in Pakistan. So with the Living Indus initiative, right from its conception back in December 2021, it was conceived in a very consultative manner, and the initiative was actually conceptualized in collaboration with the Prime Minister's Committee for Climate Change. It was made part of the UN SDCF, which is a 5-year framework for the streams of work that the UN is going to undertake in Pakistan. But even after its conception, the menu of interventions that you saw on the screen earlier, and some of them very novel, like giving Indus rights of legal personhood, we went around, all 4 provinces, engaging at the chief minister level, with the prime minister in AJK. So not just provincial governments, but the federal government, with academia, civil society, and we really, and down to line departments. So, we use the planning and development departments in each province as well as federal PND as a coordinating body. Down to line departments, we were consulting with the agriculture department, we were consulting with the environment department, because we wanted this to not be another mega project. We wanted this to be more of a call to action and a way of consolidating all of the dispersed projects that were happening across Pakistan. So, there's a Punjab Green Development Program, there's another water resource accountability program, there are, things happening around air pollution, etc., things happening on wastewater management. We wanted Living Indus to consolidate all of those efforts, and hence you see, the Living Indus portal wanting to be a one-stop shop, not just to garner information about the health of the Indus through citizen science, but also, sort of a one-stop shop for organizations to report on, what they're doing vis-a-vis the health of the Indus, or what they're doing vis-a-vis the triple planetary crisis within Pakistan. So it is a plan that was developed consultatively. Of course, that was at the planning stage. Now it's moved on from conception to free feasibility, where at this point in time we're putting it up for blended sources of finance. In each of the intervention, and I really encourage all of you to go look at the plan. It's available online on livingindus.com. In each of the interventions, that the plan proposes, or they've really been, care has been exercised to map them out to Pakistan's NDCs. They have been mostly conceptualized to be implemented with blended sources of finance as public-private partnerships. They also have a community meter. So some of the interventions are downright, they depend on engagement with the community, such as community-based ecotourism, 100,000 community ponds. But others also have varying degrees of community involvement, because the plan is, as I said, a call for action. A call for action by young people like yourself, by the citizens of Pakistan. And that is what I feel would differentiate, or could differentiate a top-down project from, really a movement.
Right.
And that's really, and that's, part of the Green Startup Award is also part of the initiative to really compel people like yourself and myself to think about sustainability, and to sort of submit their ideas. So that to me is, that to me sort of addresses the top-down thing that you mentioned.
Oh, fair enough. And like you said, it's really about ensuring it goes from a top-down initiative to something that is more of a movement down to the grassroots.
Yeah, so we really wanted to permeate the fabric of the society.
Right,
There's lots that's happening. So UNICEF, for instance, UNICEF is also one of the partners with the Green Startup Award. They're planning to run citywide COPs. There's also a lot of so we're planning to engage with the early years on climate literacy. So really, there has been some activity on this end in South Punjab, where there has been inclusion of climate literacy in the early years curriculum, but we're planning to sort of scale that up, or scale a better version of it up. So lots happening on that end to really make it a movement, where there will be a lot of participation on the public, even in the public sector. So we have been engaging with the Civil Services Academy, training not just the DMG group at the entry level, but also with the mid-career management course and the senior management course on the Living Indus Challenge. So previously there hasn't been a module that teaches them about climate change and the environment. So now there is this effort to sensitize them on these, because of course they have, in their various capacities and in their previous experience, some of them have 12 years, 15 years, 20 years of experience when they get to the top. But so they have had the experience, but not necessarily they haven't been sensitized to climate change, climate action. So there's a lot going on that front as well, to really make it a movement, and to convince all stakeholders in Pakistan of the need for it?
I mean, I was really impressed with 25 initiatives already in. You can tell there is no tunnel vision there. You're not constricted or restricted to just one type of help. 25 initiatives. You can pick any one that you are able to contribute to or have a vision about and work. And if you have 25 different types of individuals coming in with 25 different things for those 25 different initiatives, there's a lot that can be done. बैठे बैठे मुझे ख्याल आ रहा था कि एक advocacy toolkit बननी चाहिए that can be used to create engage youth, young people in universities and schools to become advocates for their own communal issues, just area of the Indus that they are living in. And like the curriculum that you were talking about, generic बहुत ज़रूरी है, but I think कि जो हमारे examples होते हैं, you have to focus on what's actually happening on the ground in your city or your village or your area, because then you are able to relate to it. And then you just want to be part of the solution, which is what we need.
I was going to ask you, Sharmeen, and it's sort
You
of
wanted to
time.
say something?
Yeah. So there's already a project named Dastane Plastic.
Okay.
So we have baat kar rahe the Unilever is doing it. So we have partnered with Unilever for this project. Dastane Plastic is purely for it's right from the grassroots to the upstream. जिसमें schools जो हैं वो participate कर रहे हैं, जिसमें waste pickers they are participating, scavengers are participating, and what we are doing is जो हमारे लिए plastic लेकर आते हैं we purchase that. But in return, we provide them medical facility. So हमने उनके लिए कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा स्पेशल कर दिया है कि जिसमें वो एम्बेड हो सकें. हमेशा आप कोशिश करते हैं कि उनसे पैसे से आपने ले लिया and then they are free to go anywhere. What we found out, they don't have medical facility for these blue collar people. So जो waste pickers हैं उनको कभी medical camps provide नहीं हुए. We initiated this with the help of Unilever and Adil and Edison Hospital. और उसमें हमने कायद-ए-आज़म इंडस्ट्रियल एरिया में इस सारे को इनिशिएट किया कि वो प्लास्टिक फ्री कर रहे थे, हम उसके साथ उनके वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट में साथ थे. So this is what we learned कि अगर हम ग्रास रूट से स्टार्ट करेंगे तो it will work. So LGS ने हमारे साथ स्टार्ट किया, ब्लूमफील्ड हॉल ने स्टार्ट किया, UCP है इनिशिएटेड है कि जितना प्लास्टिक इकट्ठा हो रहा है so we lift that up और वो properly segregate हो रहा है to convert it into another product. और अगला प्रोजेक्ट जो है वो वही है जो वन ऑफ द रहीम खान प्रोजेक्ट कि कैसे वहाँ पे प्लास्टिक फ्री सिटी करनी है. So मेरे ख्याल में जब आप एक स्टेप ले लेते हैं तो उससे अगले स्टेप्स लेने आसान है और अपने प्रोजेक्ट्स को कोशिश करना चाहिए टू इंटीग्रेट इट विद सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी, क्योंकि इंडस्ट्री को पैसा वापस भी चाहिए. So industry cannot only spend money on it. जैसे शर्मीन कह रही थी कि 30% अगर आप क्लाइमेट चेंज या एनवायरनमेंट की साइड पे 70% बिजनेस केस है तो भी वो नहीं आएगी. क्यों? क्योंकि उसको वापस अपना पैसा हर सूरत में चाहिए. वो अगर 2 रुपए खर्च करेगी तो 10 रुपए वापस आपसे लेगी हर सूरत में. So make it it should be it revolve around the circular economy thing, जहाँ पे it should make sense कि जहाँ से एक जगह से ले रहे हो दूसरी जगह पे जा रही है तो इंडस्ट्री को आपस में कितना फायदा हो रहा है and become a bridge. वो बिजनेस केसेस बनते हैं और वही सक्सेसफुल बिजनेसेस हैं. लीनियर बिजनेसेस अब सक्सेसफुल नहीं है. सो इट्स माय पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू कि आप लेके जाएं और फिर 2-3 महीने के बाद आपको एक नया क्लाइंट चाहिए. लेकिन अगर सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी है वो अगले 4-5 साल आपसे चलता रहेगा.
I mean, if Sharmeen, you can add to that, given your technical expertise on this, to what extent do you think local communities are aware of the local challenges themselves? So, for instance, अगर आप एक startup को advise कर रहे हैं, you're giving that business consultancy, what are some of the challenges that are resulting from climate change that are unique to Pakistan? So obviously, climate change impact is never localized; it's global in nature. But the way Pakistan is being impacted, what are some of those unique challenges you could talk about?
Okay, when you're working with communities or as a private sector or even academia, when you go down and you work with communities, you have to understand you're looking for shared challenges. Usme pani, food, clean air, ये सबसे बड़े हमारे challenges आ जाते हैं. I mean, I know it's very generic, but it's not so generic either. These are three mains. I mean, आपकी right of life है, right? And suddenly you are struggling to breathe. You are struggling with the quality of water that you are exposed to. And you are generating waste because it's the easier thing to do instead of recycling or taking it in. And usme, see, communities realize this. We think unko pata nahi hai, awareness create karenge, and then we're going to talk to them and things are going to be all fine. It's never that. They know what they don't care, not because they don't care about the environment. They will die of hunger first. Their child has 1 meal a day. They don't care about segregating waste. They will care about it if it brings in some money, if they can sell it. Nobody's going to buy clean water. Why should they? I mean, they should be able to drink out of the tap. सीधी सी बात, हवा में कहाँ जाएंगे वो, कैसे अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे? What do they need to do? So they don't understand. We need to be able to bring in जब आप चेंजेस और रिफॉर्म्स और इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के ऊपर उतरते हैं ना, तो आपको चीप अल्टरनेटिव्स ला के देने पड़ते हैं साथ. Things that will help them make the extra effort so that eventually, short term, within 3-4 years, they can see the difference. Not long term. Nobody's going to think long term when it comes to communities and stakeholders and challenges that way. So shared challenges बहुत सारे हैं जो overlap कर रहे हैं, और सबसे ज्यादा उसमें हमारे पास आ जाता है rising temperatures, which lead to so many other things. Like आपके पास high temperatures है, आपका rain का सारा system हिल जाता है, आपकी ambient temperature बढ़ जाता है, आप हीट स्ट्रोक शुरू हो जाते हैं, हीट वेव्स आ जाती हैं. We talk of planting trees, but trees need to be a certain height and they need to have a certain sized canopy for it to be effective. कि आपके इतने चर्च नीचे अपने मोटरसाइकिल, मंजी, गाड़ी, कुछ भी आप खड़ा करें, वो उसको ठंडा कर सके. ठीक है? We talk about that, and we talk about urban forests, but we are the same country and the same set of people who also cut down trees for fuel. And that is an indicator of the worst economic crisis ever, when your society cuts down trees for fuel. So आपने 2-3 जगह देखा है जहां पे आप एक solution लेके आ रहे हैं, वहां पे आपको pressure भी release करना पड़ता है from what's happening. तो ये चीजें, like he said, talked about a poor policy structure. वो policy बन के उधर ही रह जाती है ऊपर, like an ornament, Christmas ornament that just shines once a year जब NDCs जाने होते हैं. That's it. And उसकी कोई trickle down effect नहीं होता. And eventually everybody around, businesses always will look after the communities that they work in. They will look after the land, they will help you look after the water. And I think they are now shifting from CSR to something called creating shared value that Nestle follows, CSV, where responsibility lies with the community. You are just aiding. Yeah. So a lot of things, I mean, that was like a loaded question and a big one.
Yeah.
But there are so many things. I hope you try and understand that when you work with communities and you work with people, you have to be willing to listen. You have to really be willing to listen. And sometimes you have to work with shared challenges, not the challenge that you feel needs to be solved.
Right.
अगर जब तक वो शेयर नहीं होगा among everybody, there will be no consensus. You will not have customers, really. And voice of the people is where private sector will look at. Okay, ये community है, it affects our work. یونینس ہیں, لوگ کھڑے ہو جاتے ہیں, فیکٹریاں بند ہو جاتی ہیں, they will only listen to those people. They're not going to listen to you, me, Uzile, when we come with this amazing bright product. They are going to listen to the people. Are they happy? We'll purchase it, we'll work on it, but does it help them? Because them being happy helps our business. So, usko, like you said, the circular economy, you have to have a circular stakeholder system also. Like, just talk to them with the willingness to listen and comprehend, not just listen and dump.
No, I think there are lessons in that for any entrepreneurial mindset in exactly what you're saying. And I know people are getting shifty now, so I'm coming towards the last few questions. I want to bring in Zile, you here, because abhi jisa Sharmeen baat kar rahi thi, when you have, for a business, it's impossible to ignore the community, but it's equally impossible for them to ignore the policy structure that Mohammed was talking about.
Red tape.
And aapka to kaam jo hai, essentially that is public responsibility. Ensuring that there is waste management is a public service delivery responsibility. So when we have young entrepreneurs thinking of business ideas, thinking of sustainability, what room is there, for instance, public-private partnerships when you're thinking in terms of an enterprise, a social enterprise? Do you engage with the government? Because there has to be some engagement with the kind of work you're doing. And in general, any enterprise, at some point, aapko regulatory authorities ya regulatory framework ka saamna karna padega, and more so in your line of work.
بالکل ایسے ہی ہے. میرے خیال میں جب آپ خاص طور پہ جب انوائرمنٹ ریلیٹڈ بزنسز آپ اسٹارٹ کرتے ہیں تو آپ کو یہ پتہ ہونا چاہیے کہ انوائرمنٹ ڈپارٹمنٹ جو ہے وہ کس طریقے سے آپ کو اگر اس کے کوئی این او سیز لینے ہیں کسی سائٹ کے لیے پروسیسنگ کے لیے تو دیٹ شوڈ بی ڈن فرسٹ. اپنے آئیڈیا کو جس وقت آپ آگے لے کے جا رہے ہیں آپ کو پتہ ہے کہ وہ آئیڈیا نے کس اسٹیج پر ہے. اٹس اے ویری لٹل اماؤنٹ جو کہ آئیڈیا اسٹیج پہ ملتی ہے, اور میجورٹی آف دا ٹائم وہ 2-3 ہزار $4,000 $10,000 لے کے جیب میں اور پھر ہم غائب ہو جاتے ہیں سین سے. اگر ہم یہ نہ کریں اور ہم یہ سوچ لیں کہ اس میں سے کوئی 2-4 ہم نے اپنے بزنس میں ڈال دینے, اٹ ول ورک آؤٹ. سو وہ آپ کو ڈبل اماؤنٹ کر کے واپس دے دے گا, دس از فار شیور. سو اگر آپ یہ کوشش کر سکیں, تو جس پہ آپ کہہ رہی ہیں کہ پبلک پرائیویٹ پارٹنرشپ کے لیے دیر آر رومس اوپن. آپ کا آئیڈیا اچھا ہے. بھی مجھے اتفاق ہوا جانے کا ابھی کچھ عرصہ پہلے, سو ہم نے کہا ہمیں بڑا زبردست ایک آئیڈیا آیا اور ہم یہ ضرور جا کے گورنمنٹ سے شیئر کریں گے اور ہم ضرور پبلک پرائیویٹ پارٹنرشپ پہ جائیں گے. وہاں پہ جو صاحب بیٹھے ہوئے تھے انہوں نے کہا کہ آپ کا آئیڈیا بہت بہترین ہے, مجھے بہت اچھا لگا ہے, ایک درخواست لکھیں, اس درخواست کے ساتھ یہ ساری چیزیں جمع کرائیں اور پھر آپ کی اپلیکیشن وہاں تک پہنچے گی, پھر ہم دیکھیں گے کہ ہم نے آپ کو. سو میں سوچا کہ اس سارے پاگل خانے سے بہتر ہے کہ ہم خود ہی کچھ گھسیٹ گھساٹ کے کر لیں, اینڈ وی ڈڈ. سو وہ ایسے ہے کہ آپ وہ والے ان ایریاز میں جو انڈس کے ساتھ ساتھ کے ایریاز ہیں, جیسے ہے کہ آپ نے ان ایریاز کو ڈیولپ کرنا ہے, وہاں پہ اگر آپ کا اپنا کوئی ایسا ہے سسٹم یا آپ ملنے ملانے میں نیٹ ورکنگ میں ہنٹڈ کہ وہاں پہ کون آپ کے ساتھ مل کے اس چیز کو کر سکتا ہے. اپنے آئیڈیا, چھوٹے آئیڈیا کو لے کے اسٹارٹ امپلیمنٹنگ اٹ. اگر امپلیمنٹیشن نہیں ہوئے گی تو پھر وہ ختم ہو جائے گا کچھ عرصے کے بعد. امپلیمنٹیشن سے آپ کا آئیڈیا پیوٹ بھی ہوتا ہے, پیوٹ ہوتے ہوتے کئی دفعہ اتنا پیوٹ ہو جاتا ہے کہ وہ والا بیسک رہتا ہی نہیں ہے جس میں ہم نے بیس بنائی ہوتی ہے. لیکن اینی وے, سو پبلک پارٹنرشپ پہ ضرور جائیں, ضرور جا کے دیکھیں کہ گورنمنٹ آپ کو کیا آفر کرتی ہے اور کتنا آفر کرتی ہے. سو گورنمنٹ آپ کو ضرور آفر کرے گی, وہ آپ کو بتائے گی کہ یہ بہت سارا کلائمیٹ چینج میں اور اس میں ہمارے پاس بہت سارے بجٹس ہیں, اچھے آئیڈیاز لے کر آئیں. لیکن وہی ہے کہ 10 سال نہیں ہے ضائع کرنے کے لیے. اگر آپ کے پاس ہے اتنا سیمنا ہے کہ 10 سال پیسہ نہیں ملا تو کوئی بات نہیں, لیکن یہ کہ کیپ ناکنگ دی ڈورز. کبھی اس سے پیچھے نہیں ہونا کہ اب ہم چھوڑ دیں تو ہاں, یو نیور نو. سو وہ یہی ہے کہ اگر اندھیرے میں پتھر ماریں کہ کبھی کبھی صحیح بھی لگ جاتا ہے. سو کوشش کریں, کیپ آن ڈوئنگ اٹ, اور کوشش کریں کہ नेटवर्किंग स्ट्रांग रखें अपनी। कोई ना कोई आपको उस पूरे सर्कल में ऐसा मिल ही जाएगा जिस तरह जिले को मिल गए हेल्प करने के लिए, और जिस तरह फार्मदार को मिल गए हेल्प करने के लिए कि डॉक्टर साहब आ गए और लोग आ गए, NIC ने हेल्प कर दिया। आई वॉज नॉट इनटू द बिजनेस, मैं तो आराम से अपनी नौकरी कर रही थी, 2-2.5 लाख रुपए कमा रही थी। जहन में आया कि भाई नहीं, पैसा बड़ा है कारोबार में बहुत पैसा है, वो ही करना चाहिए। जिस वक्त वो स्टेप लिया तो वो 2-2.5 लाख रुपए से 10 रुपए भी नहीं कमाए। जो USAID से कमाया वो भी लगा दिया, जो यूनिडो से कमाया वो भी लगा दिया, और फिर समझ आई कि पैसा वही पास रहता है जो मेहनत से कमाया हुआ होता है। ये जो 2-4 हज़ार डॉलर मिल जाएंगे, ये तो वैसे ही लोगों को दावतें देने में खत्म हो जाने हैं। आइडिया तो इम्प्लीमेंट बाद में होएगा।
बेसिकली अगर सुकून है जिंदगी में उसे रहने दो।
बिल्कुल नहीं, अगर सुकून है तो बेसुकूनी ज्यादा अच्छी है। you'll keep yourself young। अभी तो आप यंग हैं, आपको उसकी जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन जैसे जैसे आप एज करेंगे और आप अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस कर रहे होंगे, आपका हर एक्सपीरियंस आपको बेहतरी की तरफ लेके जाएगा। इफ यू आर इनटू इट, अगर आप चाहते हैं कि सोशल एंटरप्राइज की तरफ आएगा।
I'd like to add to this कि अपना रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क बिल्कुल सही रखें। You should know what laws govern you at every stage. It is very important. Otherwise, you're going to be blindsided by ये वाला form तो वो वाला form. The government is the largest institution in this country, I hope. Having said that, it can roll you up in red tape and you'll never see the light of day. You need its blessings. So you have to make sure your paperwork is in order. There is no harm in having paperwork. उसमें boring है, मेहनत करनी पड़ती है. It's like going to class and learning a new topic and discussing and laughing and then having to write it 100 times in the copy just to learn. That's the boring part. Do your paperwork, that's the boring part, but that is the only thing that's going to save you a lot of heartache when you actually go on the ground. On the ground, आपको local governments के साथ काम करना पड़ेगा, local leadership के साथ काम करना पड़ेगा. आपके पास ये पीछे paperwork तैयार नहीं होगा तो वो भी आपको बिठा सकते हैं, like totally, but again, then they will just have a lot more ammunition. ठीक है ना, सारों की dreams आपकी dreams नहीं होंगी. So
अब ये भी जरूरी नहीं है कि गवर्नमेंट आपको हर दफा सपोर्ट करे।
हाँ,
कभी कभी इतनी रेजिस्टेंस
आपको
भी है कि
yes चाहिए
कभी इतनी रेजिस्टेंस भी है कि आपको कई महीने बड़ी खामोशी से गुजारने पड़ते हैं और बड़ी तकलीफ में भी गुजारने पड़ते हैं, लेकिन doesn't matter। अगर if you're passionate,
your paperwork needs to be on spot, on point every time with everything. आपने transparency को मजाक समझना ही नहीं है। You're engaging in stakeholder engagement, आप मिल रहे हैं लोगों से, हर किस्म के लोगों से। I'm not saying कि आपके पास भी सर्वे फॉर्म्स होने चाहिए, इसमें yes no yes no yes no yes no 4 पेजेस कौन बैठ के डेटा करे, but you need to have proof, you need to have recorded conversations, you need to have photographs, you need to be very diligent in what you're writing कि जी रिपोर्ट उसी वक्त बैठो, शाम को खाने पीने पे हंसी मजाक पे एक सिगरेट लगाओ और साथ अपनी रिपोर्ट खत्म करो कि आज हमने ये बात की, हम इन लोगों से मिले, ये इश्यूज आ रहे हैं. Maybe that's something you do not want to tackle, but it needs to be there because these are all red flags that help you navigate. और आपको पहले 2-3 साल बहुत help चाहिए navigation में. And everybody is not going to be helpful and everybody is not going to be on your side. The data that you collect, and data is all different kinds of data. The data that you collect is what's going to keep you on track.
That's true.
Do you want to
Ji,
Sure.
I just wanted to add my perspective to this and also the previous, presentation that Dr. Fazal
Oh, I love that.
I think it had a really good framework of उसके अंदर of 25 things, and I think all 25 of those, each of them has actually an area of opportunity.
It's a doable idea.
Yeah, 1 or 2 that jumped out to me were, for example, tourism related to the Indus. Now I know that, for example, one of the largest freshwater lakes in Asia is Lake Manchar, right on the banks of the Indus. Is fed water from it and things that are due to flooding. We use सारा lake clean भी हो गया. The Mohana people who actually live on the lake, they have these courthouse villages and things like that, and a prime area for something like that, right? And if you look at recently पिछले 2 सालों के अंदर काफी ऐसी startups हैं जो अच्छी fund भी हुई हैं, exit भी किया लोगों ने, which are related to actually tourism out of Pakistan. So I think that's a really great area of opportunity.
And if you seriously look at ecotourism and do it
Yeah.
properly, it could be a start of many happy partnerships because ecotourism is not easy.
Yeah,
And be a source of livelihood too for the
Local.
communities.
Yeah. Local.
exactly that. And similarly, something else that jumped out was forestation along the Indus. I mean, Lums ke andar, I would expect like you guys are super smart and bright, right? Like the bright brains in Lahore. So I would suggest, look, if you pick one of these areas, I wouldn't say go to the government or fill a form or do anything like that, right? Personally,
Work on your idea first. Yeah.
go to Dr. Saab, for example, and say कि जी मुझे आपका ड्रोन चाहिए, लाइडार का सेंसर चाहिए.
गलत आइडिया आपने इस पैनल पे मैं ही गलत बंदा हूँ. I was thinking about that all the time.
No, he's going to turn around and say, आप मेरे साथ मजाक करना बंद करें.
But honestly speaking, there's startups popping up left, right, and center in the rest of the world using technology like LiDAR and drones to survey forestry and come up with actually ways of quantifying biomass in forests and quantifying how much carbon is being sequestered in forests and things like that. And I don't think it would be beyond the capability of you guys, Lums's resources, maybe help from NIC. To me, going to the government would be a little bit like, why are you actually even considering it? Like, it would basically mean that you don't have an idea and you need money to go dig around and find an idea, then okay, that's fine. But if you can identify a problem with your deductive skills, I'm sure that shouldn't be that big a deal if you've got a framework of 25 things to follow.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot already.
Yeah.
I mean, the video was very inspirational. I was just like almost jumping out of my seat. My friend was just holding my hand down. It's okay. No, it makes you want to do something and ideas come. It could be a very simple idea. Very simple. Work on it, bring in the complexity, build on it. It's a living movement. It's a living project. Make your ideas living ideas. Let them grow, let them change according to what is required, and make a buck of it also.
I think Sharmeen's sort of reality check with getting your documentation right, and then both of them concluding with very motivational ideas. I think that's a good place to stop the panel discussion. But before everyone leaves, we know the $2,000 is a very humble amount, and we've admitted that. But nonetheless,
Exchange rate बढ़ गया, it's okay.
we
It's
do
not
want
so
to talk
humble
about the grant, and I'd like to invite Minahil, who is our community manager, who will very briefly talk about the application process. It's a good starting point, so please do consider it.
If nobody wants it, I'll help.
Thank you so much, Sabha. I'm very sure everybody is very thrilled after this experiential conversation. So I'll quickly go over the application process. If you have a business idea which is solving any of the three triple planetary crises, you can apply to us for the Living Indus Youth Champions Award. All you need to do is land on our website. There is an apply button. Click to the button, you will get a form. It's a very comprehensive form. There are 6 different sections, but the section that is very mandatory for the Living Indus applicants is named after the Living Indus applicants only. So you open that section. It has very simple questions. Again, this grant is basically for youth. So one of your founding team members should be aged between 16 to 32. So this is one of the important questions that you need to answer.
There also, I should be 16.
I look 32. I think I can pull it off.
And then which of the crises your idea is solving is one of the questions as well, which you need to explain. So essentially you have to explain your business idea in that section, nothing very detailed, but again, in detail you can go would be good for your application review in future. So if you have any issues regarding the application, you can reach out to us on apply.nicl@plums.edu.pk. Also, we are here to support you on our official number as well, which would be on our social media again. You can approach us through that official number if you have any difficulty in filling the form. Beside, once you fill the form, there is a threefold evaluation process. The first screening is very subjective based on your application form that we do internally within our team. The second round is essentially with the experts that would further interview you regarding your business idea. Once again, some more details regarding the team and how the team effectively contributes to the idea. The third and final stage for our evaluation is essentially with our Foundation Council members. It's a group of people who are leading entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. So essentially, one of the entrepreneur who is maybe in the environment sector would be in the panel towards the end, who would evaluate you. You have to pitch your idea. So that's more or less rundown of the application process. If anyone has any question, feel free to ask.
पूछ लो.
My
Yes,
question is that can non-profit organizations can participate in this?
so a non-profit is not a startup essentially. So it should be a business idea that essentially should be revenue generating in one way or other. So not-for-profit is generally not considered as a startup.
Maybe as an individual you might.
Yes.
I have a question not related to this, but related to the panelists.
Sure.
Like we are from PAP, Pakistan Institute of Fashion and Design, and you mentioned that you work in generation. So like we know sustainability is a big issue. अब separate जो थोड़ा सा था कि उन्होंने recycled जो waste है उससे bags किए, ठीक है. Then they have a section which has recycled yarn. Other than that, अब ये चीजें जो consumer focus हैं, consumer pressure ना. Is there anything जो processes को cater करे? क्योंकि like I know a bit about it कि जो हम लोग dyeing यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, that takes tons of water, ठीक है, but the dyeing that's done through carbon dioxide that just uses 14% of that amount. So is there anything that's being done to innovative process?
There are innovative.
IoT का mention किया. Is there anything?
There are innovative processes working to reduce water consumption in dyeing. Yes, because initially generation itself, I'm a consultant there, right? So generation itself is dealing with apparel directly. They get dyed cloth and they get stuff. What they're doing is they're trying to green their supply chain. They're trying to get businesses to declare how they dye the cloth and what's the process and how much water they are either wasting or saving, or uski basis where now they are making decisions. And they haven't had generations, so they are very expensive in any case. And they haven't had a problem shifting vendors. जो पहले सस्ता था वो महंगे पे चले गए because जो महंगा वाला है वो is using innovative technology to save water. Yes, that's being done. They have their own regenerate line. Anything that is 5 meters and above, जो कपड़ा रह जाता है, remade and reproduced. And they could use a lot of cotton. So the chindi waste is now not being sold as boiler burning waste. It is now being sold. It's not being sold. Actually, they are repurposing it as thread. It's being sent to Faisalabad और उससे धागा बन के इन्हीं के लिए वापस आ रहा है. So like circular economy, they're saving a lot of money, and yeah, that's what they're doing. It's one step at a time, and they've just been actually their sustainability journey has been just a year long, and already they realized they were doing so much that they just needed to bring it together and give it some sort of form and shape. There is a zero plastic policy on the factory in the grounds. There is a Zakat fund. They're working with artisans. और वहाँ पे कम्युनिटी से उठा के ये वो कढ़ाई वाला वो लेके आते हैं या जहाँ काम भेजते हैं, वहाँ पे they're actively working with women and women's health and teaching them about wash initiatives where cleanliness leads to a healthier household and healthier children, and because they tell them कि जी आपने जहाँ बैठ के काम करना है वो कमरा साफ होना चाहिए, सफेद कपड़ा है, सफेद धागा है, हाथ लगते हैं, और वो automatically they're like your kids can play with you but their hands need to be clean. At the end of the day, they are bathing the kids every day, सफाई हो रही है, पानी साफ है, बीमारियां खत्म हो गई हैं, they've got like all these clinics जो वो करते हैं, not only for women but for their husbands also. So it's like a fabric. There are a lot of things going on. छोटी 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 छोटी
I
चीजें
would
let's
like
say.
to add up जो आप कह रहे हो, बिल्कुल इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में जो आपकी टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री है जो मेजरली तो वैसे ही इफेक्टेड है हमारे एनर्जी क्राइसिस की वजह से, लेकिन दे आर प्रिटी मच इंटूवर्ड कि जो वाटर कंजम्पशन है वो हाईली रिड्यूस्ड साइड पे चला जाए, एंड दे आर ऑलरेडी रिसाइकलिंग इट. सो पानी को इतनी दफ़ा रिसाइकिल करते हैं एंड इट्स ऑलवेज एज गुड एज इट वाज. सो उसमें कोई अब प्रॉब्लम नहीं आ रही है. हाँ, प्रॉब्लम वहाँ पर आती है वेयर पीपल डू नॉट इन्वेस्ट इन इट. वो छोटे जो हमारे स्टेट कल्चर वाले लोग हैं वो उसमें इन्वेस्ट करना ज़रा उनको मुश्किल है. जो प्राइवेट लिमिटेड या पब्लिक लिमिटेड पे चले जाते हैं जिनके पास बाहर के ऑर्डर्स आते हैं, जनरेशन के पास अभी बाहर के ऑर्डर्स नहीं है, लेकिन जैसे स्टाइल है, सिफायर है और इस तरह यूएस अपैरल है, सूरती है, इनके पास एडिडास से, नाइकी से, ज़ारा से,
Client based
इनके एग्जैक्टली. सो उनके इतने स्ट्रॉन्ग उनकी इन सब चीज़ों के ऊपर उनका फोकस होता है कि आप क्या कर रहे हैं. सो दे हैव टू कंप्लाई ऑल दोज थिंग्स टू मेक श्योर कि उनके पास इंटरनेशनल क्लाइंट हो. सो जो बात फार्मदार ने की कि अगर आप क्लाइंट सेंट्रिक होते जाएंगे तो आपके बिजनेसेस डेवलप होते जाएंगे. वो फ्लरिश तो करेंगे लेकिन वो डेवलप हो जाएंगे. सो दे मेक श्योर कि पानी कम से कम इस्तेमाल हो रहा हो. इस वक्त अभी नई पॉलिसी आई है जिससे शुगर केन की बात हो रही थी, सो डिस्टिलरी के ऊपर आई है कि जब आप डिस्टिलरीज के निकालते हैं पानी तो वो फिर वापस वेस्ट वाटर नहीं होना चाहिए. इट शुड बी रिसाइकल इन एनी वे. कोक अपना जो वाटर वेस्ट वाटर वो रिसाइकिल कर रहा है, पेप्सी कर रहा है इस वक्त, और अभी इससे अगले जो स्टेप्स वो इनिशिएटिव्स ले रहे हैं वो इससे भी कहीं ज़्यादा है. तो इंडस्ट्री फोकस्ड है इन सारी चीज़ों के ऊपर. वो सिर्फ ये है कि हमारे पास इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं आ रही होती है या हमें पता नहीं होता. एज ए स्टूडेंट हमें नहीं पता होता.
उनकी इंफॉर्मेशन इवन उनकी वेबसाइट्स पे भी नहीं होती. लाइक आई वर्क इन कंटेंट राइटिंग एंड अगर आप इंटरनेशनल किसी भी आरडी का देख लें, उनकी जितनी कम्युनिटी सर्विस है, जो भी वो प्रोजेक्ट्स कर रहे हैं, कुछ भी वो कम्युनिटी में काम कर रही हैं, जो भी उनकी सस्टेनेबिलिटी गोल्स हैं, वो सब उनकी वेबसाइट्स पर लिस्टेड है. वी ओपन अ वेबसाइट, आप कोई उनकी वेबसाइट देख लें, किसी बड़े ब्रांड की वेबसाइट देख लें, they might have a section named CSR but they don't have details. So where do we get that?
बेटा होता ये है कि as much as we love Google and social media for information, there's a lot of trolling that goes on. और ये जो checks and balances रखे होते हैं और ये जो एक blackout रखा होता है, this is also to keep the chaos out of your own process. Because आपको नहीं पता होता, एक troll शुरू होता है and it brings down. Nobody can understand what you're working with. वो तो कहते हैं ना आपके पास तो करोड़ों है, आप खर्चे और इसको करें. They don't understand कि करोड़ों तो है but 3,000 बंदे की livelihood भी इन्हीं के हाथ में है, right? So one shift here will lead to having half of them being let off. All those people, उनको देखना है उनके घर, उनकी medical expenses. So to keep trolling out of the picture, इसलिए because यहाँ पे information is not treated with the same sanctity it would be otherwise. और अगर आप बड़ी बड़ी MNCs के उस पे देखें, उसमें भी डिटेल सिर्फ उस वक्त डलती है जब वो एक दफा वेट हो जाती है totally completely and the project is probably a year old. There is nothing that can be done to it. Once it's completed then it's put up, ताकि वो डैमेज हो ही ना सके ना किसी तरीके से. एक बंदे ने एक आवाज निकाला, भाई फतूल में छेड़ दिया तो एक, that's why. So what you need to do is perhaps इस तरह के platforms and get-togethers and you know I like to call them talk-a-lots. So you know, go to them. That's where you get your information from, nothing on the net. Yeah.
Can I just offer some practical advice? if you're interested in this, go get an internship with them. आपको सारा कुछ पता
खाते खुल जाते हैं.
There are organizations now and platforms such as the Pakistan Textile Council, which has about 25 textile companies
On board, yeah.
and Net Zero Pakistan, which has about 26 members, and 25 of those are textile companies, and they're working on sustainability. So a lot of the work that individual companies are doing is being monitored by and orchestrated through these platform organizations. So it'll also be useful if you tap into their resources.
But I love the internship part. सारे खाते खुल जाते हैं.
Are there
They won't say
questions?
no.
Are there questions related to the grant? Otherwise, I think we can.
Network over time.
Yeah, exactly. Network overview. I think we've taken up a lot of time of the panel. So, अगर grants से related questions हैं, please do ask Minahil. Otherwise, join me in thanking our very eminent, very generous in their time. And if we move towards tea, then feel free to approach the NICL team, the panelists. Take your questions there. Thank you,
Thank you
Ji.
so much.
Thank you for your
you.
time.
Thank you.